The smell of fresh bread and pine sol always made me feel like I had my life together. It's a silly thing, I know, but it was my Sunday ritual. I'd go to the grocery store early, before the crowds, and buy a crusty baguette. Then I'd come home and clean my little two-bedroom house from top to bottom, the scent of the floor cleaner mixing with the warm, yeasty smell from the kitchen. It was my reset button. My moment of peace before the week swallowed me whole. That day was no different. I had my groceries put away, the milk chilling, the vegetables crisp in the drawer. My playlist of old-school R&B was humming softly from the Bluetooth speaker on the counter. I was wiping down the last of the countertops, humming along to Al Green, When the World Tilted on Its Axis. It wasn't a knock. It was a bang. A deep, percussive boom that shook the whole house. My hand froze, the sponge dripping soapy water onto the floor. My heart, which had been beating to the slow rhythm of the music, instantly kicked into a frantic, panic drum solo against my ribs. Another boom, harder this time, rattling the pictures on the wall. Then the shouting started. Police! Open the door. The words didn't compute at first. Police? Why would the police be at my door? I'd never even had a speeding ticket. I lived a quiet life. I'm a graphic designer. I work from home. My biggest vice is buying too many houseplants. We have a warrant. Open the door now. My mind was a blur of confusion and a cold, creeping fear that started in my toes and worked its way up my spine. A warrant? For what? For who? This had to be a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. I took a step toward the door, my mouth opening. To shout back, to tell them they had the wrong house. But then I heard my father's voice, as clear as if he were standing right next to me. It was a voice I hadn't heard in person for 6 years, not since cancer took him, but it lived in my head, a permanent resident. Don't you ever run to the door, Imani. Not for anyone. You don't know who's on the other side of that wood. My father was a retired army sergeant. He was a gentle giant of a man who loved to garden and tell bad jokes, but he had seen the world in all its ugliness. When I bought my first house, a single black woman living alone, he didn't just give me a housewarming gift. He gave me lessons. He took me to a gun range every weekend for 6 months. He taught me how to stand, how to breathe, how to aim. He taught me how to clean my weapon, how to respect it, and most importantly, when to use it and when not to. This isn't a toy, he'd say, his voice rumbling with seriousness. It's the last thing you ever reach for. It's the tool that keeps you alive when someone else has decided you shouldn't be. The third boom on the door sounded like a death knell. The wood was groaning, splintering. There was no time to talk, no time to reason. They were coming in. And they were coming in hot. The fear was still there, a wild animal clawing at my insides. But something else was there now, too. A cold, quiet calm that settled over me like a heavy blanket. It was the training. It was my father's voice again, cutting through the panic. Breathe, Imani. Slow as smooth, and smooth as fast. Assess. Don't react. My feet moved without me consciously telling them to. I didn't run. I moved with purpose. My R&B playlist was still playing, a surreal soundtrack to the unfolding nightmare. I bypassed the living room, heading straight for my bedroom. My hands were steady as I punched the code into the small, bolted down safe in my closet. The door clicked open. I took out the 9mm handgun. My father had helped me pick it out. It wasn't too big, fit my hand perfectly. My fingers wrapped around the familiar grip. I ejected the magazine, checked that it was full, and slammed it back into place. I pulled the slide back, the SHK sound loud in the quiet of my room, and saw the brass casing of the round in the chamber. Ready. I didn't plan on shooting anyone. The thought alone made me feel sick. My father's most important lesson echoed in my mind: you never point this at anything you ain't willing to destroy. And you don't destroy a thing unless you know for a fact it's there to destroy you. The goal wasn't to fight. The goal was to survive. I heard a final, deafening crash from the front of the house. The sound of my front door, the one I had painted a cheerful yellow just last spring, splintering into pieces. Heavy footsteps pounded on my hardwood floors. Police. Hands up. Get down. I moved to the side of my bedroom doorway, pressing my back against the wall. It was the best point of cover I had. From here, I could see a sliver of the hallway. I could hear them, but they couldn't see me yet. My gun was held low, pointed at the floor, my finger off the trigger, resting along the frame, just as Dad had taught me. My heart was a jackhammer. My breath came in controlled, measured puffs. Breathe, Imani. See what you're dealing with. Two men in heavy tactical gear appeared at the end of the hall, their rifles up, sweeping the space. They were screaming commands, but it was all a roar of noise. I saw the beams of their weapon-mounted flashlights cutting through the dim light of my home. Then, one of them saw the sliver of my body in the doorway. Gun. He screamed, a word that ripped through the air with pure, undiluted terror, and just like that, everything went into slow motion. Two rifles swung toward me. I saw the muzzles, two dark, gaping holes that promised to erase me from existence. In that split second, I saw more than just the guns. I saw the headlines. Black woman killed in her home by police. I saw my picture on the news, a smiling selfie from my last vacation. I saw my mother's face crumple in grief. I saw my name become a hashtag, all because of a mistake. Two little red dots, the laser sights from their rifles, appeared on my chest. They danced over my heart. I was a target. In my own home, the fear threatened to swallow me whole. My finger twitched. Every primal instinct screamed at me to raise my own weapon, to defend myself against the men who had broken into my house. And were now aiming to kill me. It would have been so easy. So justified, but my father's voice was louder than the instinct. It was the calm in the center of the hurricane. They don't know who you are, Imani. They're scared, too. Don't make them make a mistake they can't take back. Show them your hands. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. To consciously choose to be vulnerable when my life was on the line, with a slowness that felt agonizing, I lowered my gun to the floor. I nudged it away with my foot. Then, I raised my empty hands, palms forward, and stepped out from behind the wall, into the full glare of their lights. Don't shoot. I yelled, my voice cracking but loud. I live here. My name is Imani Washington. I live here. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, nothing happened. The red dots were still on my chest. The rifles were still pointed at my heart. I could see the officers' faces now behind their gear. They were young. Their eyes were wide with a mixture of adrenaline and fear. Then, the officer on the right yelled a name. Where is he? Where's Marcus Jones? The name hit me like a splash of cold water. Marcus Jones. I knew that name. He was the guy the news had been talking about for weeks. A suspect in a series of violent armed robberies. He was dangerous, and they thought he was here. In my house. There's no Marcus Jones here. I said, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice. You have the wrong house. Check the address. This is 1426, Maple Drive. Check your warrant. The two officers looked at each other. The one on the left, the one who had first screamed, gun, lowered his rifle a fraction of an inch. He spoke into the radio on his shoulder, his voice tense. Dispatch, can you confirm the address on that warrant? The silence that followed was filled only by my ragged breathing and the soft, mocking sound of Al Green still singing from my kitchen. Let's stay together, the radio crackled to life. The voice was tinny and distant. Stand by. Confirmation. Suspect address is 1462, Maple Drive. I repeat, 1462. Not 1426. 1462. For houses down the street, the red dots on my chest vanished, the rifles were lowered, the two young officers looked at me, and for the first time, I didn't see cops. I saw two young men who had almost killed an innocent woman. The color drained from their faces. The one on the left took a step back, his mouth hanging open slightly. Oh, God, he whispered. It wasn't to me. It was to the universe. Oh, my God. The adrenaline that had been holding me up, keeping me calm and focused, drained out of me all at once. My knees buckled. I didn't fall, but I had to brace myself against the wall to stay upright. A wave of nausea washed over me. I looked past them, down the hall to my front door. It was gone. Just a gaping hole full of splintered wood and shattered dreams of safety. My sanctuary had been breached, violated, destroyed. All because of a typo. Because someone couldn't tell a two from a six. More officers were coming into the house now, their initial aggression replaced with a kind of awkward, shuffling uncertainty. A supervisor, a sergeant with gray at his temples and weary eyes, came up to me. Ma'am, he began, his voice low. We apologize for the mistake. I just stared at him. Apologize? Did he think that word could stitch my door back together? Did he think it could erase the memory of those laser sights on my heart? Did he think it could calm the wild terror that was now, finally, beginning to bubble up inside me? I started to shake. It began in my hands and spread through my whole body, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. My teeth chattered. I looked at the sergeant, at the young officers who were now staring at the floor, at the gun I had slid away from me. I thought about what could have happened. What would have happened if I hadn't had my father's voice in my head? If I had been holding my phone instead of a dish sponge when they burst in, would they have thought it was a gun? If I had panicked and run, would they have shot me in the back? If I, a black woman with a gun in her own home, had raised it to defend herself against intruders, even intruders with badges, would I be alive right now to hear this pathetic apology? I knew the answer. We all did. Tears finally started to stream down my face. They weren't sad tears. They were hot, angry tears. Tears of pure, undiluted rage. Get out, I whispered, the words barely audible. The sergeant leaned in. I'm sorry, ma'am? I looked up, meeting his eyes, and let the full force of my fury and fear pour out. I said, "Get out. Get out of my house. All of you." They left. They filed out one by one, leaving me in the wreckage of my home. I stood there for a long time, shaking, crying, surrounded by the smell of splintered pine and the ghost of my father's protection. Later, after I'd called my mom and she'd rushed over, after we'd swept up the worst of the debris, I called my dad's old number. I knew it was disconnected, but I just needed to hear the automated message. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, and left him a voicemail I knew he would never hear. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice thick with tears. "It's me. Imani. Something happened today. Cops came, wrong house. They had their guns on me, Dad. They were going to. But I remembered what you said." I breathed. I didn't raise it. I remembered. "You saved my life today, Dad. You saved my life." I hung up and cried until I had nothing left. They replaced the door. The city sent a check for the damages, a sterile, insulting piece of paper that couldn't begin to cover the cost of what they took from me. My sense of security is gone forever. I still jump at loud noises. I see those red dots when I close my eyes. My home doesn't feel like a sanctuary anymore, it feels like a target. Sometimes I go to the range. I still practice. But it feels different now. The weight of the gun in my hand is heavier. It's not just a tool for a hypothetical situation anymore. It's a reminder of a moment when I had to choose between my training and my survival, and how, for a black woman in America, those two things can be in direct opposition. They aimed their guns at the wrong woman that day. Not because I was armed and trained, but because they didn't see a homeowner, a daughter, a graphic designer. They saw a threat that wasn't there, and I know, with a certainty that chills me to my bones, that the only reason I am alive to tell this story is because I had the training not to use my training. That is a reality I will have to live with for the rest of my life.